All right, most cash and hybrid practice owners are making the same five mistakes, and they actually don't even know that it's happening until their growth of their practice stalls. And so, what I want to cover in this video is I want to break down these exact five biggest front desk mistakes, so that could, quietly be killing your growth and your trajectory that you have. But more importantly, I'm going to show you how to spot them and fix them before they become a bigger problem in your practice. And so here's what I'm looking to cover. Number one, how are you responding to leads is actually costing you a lot of money. Number two, I want to show you the wrong way that most practices are handling insurance objections. Number three, we'll talk about why bad follow up is actually bleeding a ton of money from your practice. Number four, we'll talk about why the conversations your front desk is having is leading to patients dropping off and not actually following up with your treatment recommendations. And then lastly, number five, we're going to talk about the real reason you don't feel in control of your front desk and how to ultimately fix that information. And so this is the exact process I've used with dozens and dozens of other practices all over the country, including my own. And really, the big thing that we've been after is how do we break free from feeling stuck and our growth being stagnant? And how do we not have to hire a ton of more front desk people and blow a ton of more money on ads and really struggle to grow our practice? So let's jump in. Really, the big things that I've identified a lot of common complaints from just front desk and practice owners we've talked to. This own problem was very evident in my own practice. I mean, we were losing $10,000, $15,000 a month on paid advertising, and patients just weren't coming in the door, right? And so we definitely needed to figure that out in my own practice. Many of these things we were guilty of. And then likewise, as we've started to work with other practice owners, unfortunately, it's just these common things that, force us to spend more money on marketing. We get out, we hit the pavement, we do more and more and more, and we try to hire providers, and we just end up stuck. And the reason we end up stuck is because we have this big glaring hole at the front desk where this person is really struggling to get patients in the door, follow up with them consistently, and get them where we need to go. So let's dive in. The first big one is slow follow up. Now, so many practices are they're spending money on paid advertising, Google, Facebook. The phone's ringing. Maybe you've been around for a little while. Maybe you spent some money on SEO, and your phone rings and it either hits voicemail or maybe they opt in on your website, and we're not calling these people back very quickly. And what I typically will see in practices kind of all over the place is somebody opts in and there's chaos going on in the office. And 3 or 4 hours later, as their time is allowing them, they'll call this lead back. And that's way too late at this point. They've already called somebody else down the street. Right. Or quite frankly, they're just not going to answer because it took you way too long to get there. And so when we have this really slow response time, the thing I'm after is within 5 minutes at an absolute maximum. Maybe you're on the phone with maybe they're on the phone with somebody else and somebody does call in. We got to get back to these people within 5 minutes. And if we're not, we're missing the boat. And either we have a process problem, meaning, we just haven't maybe we haven't instructed them or we haven't given them clear enough guidelines that that's actually what needs to happen. Or alternatively, I do see some front desk where the practice owner has just slammed the front desk with 800 million tasks to do, and they just cannot physically get back to these phone calls within 5 minutes. And if that's the case, hey, maybe we need to make a hire, right? Regardless of the fact, that would be the biggest thing that I would look at in your practice is how many of my calls are actually going to voicemail? How many are we actually picking up? And are we actually following up with these people within 5 minutes? And if not, we really have missed the boat on a customer service standpoint. And potentially, we either need to find the right person, get the right process on board, or potentially make a completely different hire to add on and just provide support for our front desk. Because oftentimes I especially see that with, single provider practices where they've got one front desk, they're doing check in, they're doing check out, they're trying to call new patients, and that's just a mess and a lot to handle. And stuff starts to fall through the cracks because if you're not calling people back within 5 minutes, I guarantee you're losing those potential leads, right? Now, not all of them, but there are some leads that we're leaving on the table. And most people's average lifetime value of a customer, depending on the discipline your practice is 1,500 to 2,000 plus, right? And especially for dental practices and maybe even med spas, that lifetime value can be even greater, right? And if I lose this one person, man, that's you get one person back and it paid for that front desk person, that new one that you hired, right? Now, slow follow-up's the big common thing that I see. Number two is we can't handle insurance objections appropriately, right? These are handled the wrong way all the time. I call practices weekly. I jump on the phone and I literally will ask them out of the gate from a training perspective and training purposes. Hey, do you guys take my insurance? And within 30 seconds, they've completely lost me because no, we don't take your insurance. Oh, but I can give you a super bill. Oh, and they try to justify, and then they try to bulldoze me and tell me, well, here's why the doctor's so great, and here's why we have all these things. Would you like to get scheduled? No, I don't want to get scheduled. Yeah, you just told me you don't take my insurance, and we didn't provide any value and any context to that conversation. And it's egregious how many practices are losing so much revenue from this main problem alone. And if you can just redirect, acknowledge that insurance question, redirect it, and kick it to the end of the phone call, I guarantee you'll schedule way more people than you're scheduled, maybe even double what you're currently scheduling. Like every single week, we're working with practice owners on their front desk fixing this basic problem. And it doesn't take that long to fix. And we did a training on this last week. And if you're not a part of our school community, we certainly have tons of trainings on ways to handle this. And we just need some simple scripting, some simple phrases so that we can ultimately redirect that question to the very end of the phone call, because it's the same thing. People don't really know what they're asking, right? They just don't know what else to ask. They say, "Well, I've got insurance," and they don't know. I know, especially in like my industry, for example, or PT, Chiro, functional med, like they probably have a $5,000-6,000 deductible anyways. And so what they're going to do is they're going to say, "Do you take my insurance?" They say no. They're going to go somewhere that's in network, and they're going to turn around and still pay thousands of dollars out of pocket for very subpar care. Or they just won't go at all, right? And then they'll go see the surgeon and he's going to want to do surgery on them, right? And it's like we could have potentially avoided this altogether by us simply having phrasing to be able to handle this question. Now, the other way that people lose money on the insurance question is maybe they've got a good phrase at the beginning, but ultimately the only way they try to prevent insurance objection is at the very end when it actually comes up. Somebody says, okay, well, so you're out of network or you take my insurance. And then still, they didn't do a solid enough discovery of learning what that patient wanted. I mean, my expectation when the price point of your service is, 150, $200 plus per session, we need to be having 10, 15-minute phone conversations with patients, warming them up, providing value, getting to know this person. What is it that this person wants? And then at that point, and only at that point, can I actually describe how it is that we can solve their problem. But people try to have these cutesy phrases and these perfect little like scripts to solve the insurance problem. But when we actually listen and carry a solid discovery and actually spend 10, 15 minutes getting to know somebody, that's how you prevent insurance objections, not me trying to have some perfect phrase. So, slow follow up, handling insurance objections. Now, none of this even matters if you don't get anybody on the phone. And that brings me to the third point, which is inconsistent follow up. What most people's front desks do, they'll pick up they'll see a lead or they'll call in, or they'll call that lead and they'll only call them once or twice and that's it. People aren't, people are like, oh, I don't want to bother people or I feel bad about calling them. This is somebody who raised their hand and asked for help, and we only called them once or twice. Do you know how like many people call my phone and I probably don't answer on the first or second time because quite frankly, I'm just busy, right? And if you call me if you called me right now, I'm probably not going to be able to get to that phone call until the end of the day because I'm working, right? I got other things I need to do. And if you only call me once when it's convenient for you, I guarantee you're never going to get a hold of me. And that's exactly what's happening at a lot of people's front desk. I especially see this to be the case if we're paying for advertising, Facebook, Google ads, SEO, people being driven to your website. They opt in, we give them a phone call, and that's it. But we need a multitude of approaches, right? People communicate different ways. Maybe you got somebody who's bound at their desk all day long, but their email's constantly up, and maybe you shoot them a quick email in addition to a quick phone call. Honestly, a lot of people respond by text message this day and age. It's almost a deal breaker for us. I'll call somebody and I'll shoot them a text message to try to just get a response out of them, right? So that I can ultimately find a convenient time to jump on the phone. If somebody did that to me, I guarantee you, hey, give me a call at 4 or when when I'm free. But if they just keep calling me, don't leave me a voicemail, nothing. Like, there's no chance I'm actually going to call back. And so we need to have consistent follow up touch points for these new leads: email, phone call, text message. And it needs to be happening over 3, 4, 5 days, right? It's such a critical thing to have consistent days of follow up with them. Alternate the times that you're following up with. All that stuff is very important. Now, this is just for new leads. This doesn't even account for lost leads in the practice. So these are people who showed up for 1 or 2 sessions and maybe they had a treatment plan that they didn't actually follow up on. Or maybe this is somebody who discharged at the end and they didn't come back for some type of maintenance visit that they had going on as well, right? That's another big drop off point. And most practices have zero follow-up process for these people. We don't have a CRM, we don't have a report we can generate, and that's just revenue that's sitting out there hanging out. And for a lot of practices that have had a lot of leads over a period of time, that's a big deal breaker, right? I guarantee I could go through a lot of practice owners' EMR and find people who have dropped off over the last 2 or 3 weeks and actually try to recoup some of that revenue. It's a deal breaker. And even if you just shot that person a text message or an email and checked in on them, it's going to show that you actually care, which is a big, big thing, right? So once we're consistently following up with people, we're actually getting people on the phone. We need to make sure people aren't just showing up for a single session, right? Single session folks waste a lot of people's time. Ultimately, it wastes the practice's time because the front desk talked to them, the provider saw them for one visit, and then ultimately they didn't follow through with the care that was recommended, right? But more importantly, that patient isn't getting the outcome that they seek. And when patients only come in for one session, we never solve their problem, which means they're either going to continue to deal with it or they're going to go down the street and find somebody else to help them deal with it once it becomes a big enough problem. And so the way that your front desk is talking to patients about what the journey looks like, oftentimes they're only framing just getting them in for one session, just getting them in for the eval, the first appointment. That's all we need. But really, we need to have a conversation about the journey of working with you. What does the initial evaluation look like? What do follow-up visits look like? What do treatment options look like? And being able to describe that information at a third to fourth grade level so that the person on the line understands what it is and why it's actually going to benefit them. But it's funny because I'll secret shop practices. I'll call in and I'll ask them about what the session is like, and they have no idea. They fumble over their words. They give me inconsistent answers. It's crazy, especially for hybrid practices. And I ask about their cash rates. They have no idea, zero clue whatsoever. And ultimately, that leads to patients saying, "Well, I need to think about it. I'll give you a call back," despite maybe their friend referred them, and that friend has been a great patient of your practice who spent a ton of time and money with you and really trust you. And that is the biggest thing: is we need to be able to describe and frame what that journey looks like, especially if you have some special service that you offer, right? I mean, PT and Cairo can be kind of the Wild West sometimes, right? It's like, hey, we do dry needling. Hey, we have laser. Hey, we have soft wave. Hey, we have adjustment techniques. We have this. We have that. What the heck does any of that even mean, right? And so many people try to sell these little gadgets and gizmos when really I just need to frame the journey and talk about how it is I'm going to help this person reach the goal that you help them reach. And most, owners and operators haven't spent time with their front desk to describe what that follow-up process is. And if your front desk doesn't understand the journey, you best believe they're not going to be able to answer questions about things patients ask, and now they sound unsure, they're fumbling over their words, and they're losing patience for you. And again, there's so many whole it's so difficult to get some of these people on the phone, and then when we do get them on the phone, we don't want to be fumbling these opportunities that we have. And again, in most cases, you get 1 or 2 new patients scheduled by plugging some of these holes. You now suddenly have patients who are showing up, your schedule's more full, and you're actually growing your practice as opposed to being stagnant like you were before, right? Now, the final piece of this is, what drives all of this stuff is I need to know how we sit. I need a scorecard. I need to understand how things are going. I need to understand the health of my practice. And the final subtle mistake that a lot of practice owners in their front desk make is they have zero metrics to track. We don't have a scorecard. We don't have a scoreboard, and we don't know what we're doing. We don't know what expectations are. And I mean, it's literally like playing an entire football game as a spectator. You're watching the game and you have no idea who's winning or losing. You're guessing. You're like, well, that other team's been on the other side of the field a whole bunch, so I think maybe they're winning. That would be maddening, right? To sit and watch that. It decreases the level of excitement, and you have no idea what's going on. And that's what most practice owners do. And I think that and I was in these shoes too, right? I literally was so busy that I just did not have the time. It was survival. I'm treating patients, I'm getting people in the door, I'm trying to keep growing, I'm trying to provide for my family and hang out with my family as well. It's like there's a lot of hats to wear. And tracking your metrics isn't sexy, right? It's not fun. Nobody wants to sit and calculate these things. But we have to have a scorecard, especially for the front desk, if we want to be successful. And I did a training, I think 2 weeks ago, of literally the exact metrics to track. I can link that video here below. Definitely go back and check that out because you need to have metrics to drive those decisions. Because what happens is now the front desk is tracking things weekly. If something is off, they can see that, right? They know what drives their performance. Let's take a simple one, for example. You can take new patients scheduled, really easy metric to track. How many new patients did we get this past week? And that's an easy metric. If you don't track anything else, maybe that's the first thing you track. And if you should be getting 4 to 5 new patients every single week, are we getting that? Yes or no? And if the answer is no, then hey, maybe one of these other 4 steps were a problem. But now at least your front desk is accountable, and at least you're aware of it as well. Instead, what most practice owners do is they freak out. They realize their schedule is not as full as they want it to be. And 2 months later, when we've been bleeding revenue like nobody's business, we freak out and we go back and we try to figure out why. And so now you got to decipher 2, 3, 4 months worth of data, and your first reaction is to be very upset. When really you kind of have to reflect the mirror on yourself a little bit and say, "Hey, we weren't tracking any of these metrics to actually get where we want to go." And so definitely start tracking things so that you have a scorecard weekly and you have a scorecard at the end of every single month to know exactly where it is you're falling and how things are going. And so those are the 5 big main common mistakes that I see a lot of practice owners and their front desk make. And they're a massive revenue leak. And so now that you know what these common mistakes are, I've got videos to solve each of these problems and to help you be able to identify some of those. So check out some of our other additional trainings, plug up these holes, and then watch your practice get back to growing as opposed to being in that stuck point that it has been in.